Hello and welcome to the 8th episode of Budget with BS. Union Budget 2023 is just 2 days away, and our very special show is heading towards an exciting finale. But before that, we have a full spread for you today. I'm Nivedita Mukherjee.
Hello, I am Ruchika Chitravanshi. With the Finance Minister's Halwa ceremony done, the countdown to the budget has indeed entered the final leg. The FM speech, the last budget document to go to print, must be getting the final touches.
Today's spotlight should capture the budget mood quite well. It's on infrastructure, right, Ruchika?
Absolutely. The spotlight segment in this episode is all about the lifelines that we completely depend on: highways, ports, railways, and more. Infrastructure has been the cornerstone of the last two budgets, and it still might be a centerpiece this year. Our infrastructure reporter, Dhruvaksh Saha, has the details.
At the onset of COVID-19, India decided to pump in capital expenditure to render private investment into a virtuous cycle. Today, with private capex yet to substantially pick up, the centre is widely expected to continue its capex spree in the upcoming budget.
Banking on the multiplier effect of capex on private investment, the centre is expected to raise capex allocation to 9 to 9.5 trillion rupees. The budget is also expected to continue its capital expenditure support scheme for states, for which it had allocated 1 trillion rupees in the current fiscal. The expected pace of current capex execution is also expected to give the centre further confidence to increase allocations without worrying about idle funds. As of November 2022, 60% of the budgeted capex has already been spent. The centre is on track to meet its 7.5 trillion rupee target for this fiscal year. With the launch of National Logistics Policy, last November, Prime Minister Narendra Modi made a reduction in the national cost of logistics a key focus area. To unlock the growth potential in the economy, the cost of logistics should be 7 to 8% of the GDP. Currently, this cost is 13 to 16%, making exports less competitive and goods costlier. The 111 trillion rupee National Infrastructure Pipeline, supported by PM Gati Shakti, envisions an overhaul in the national transportation. While capital spending to execute projects has increased, the benefits are yet to be seen on the ground. Experts believe that a continued push in capex will be needed in the budget to bridge this gap.
In terms of capital expenditure, I think we need to keep in mind that the bulk of the capital expenditure is on the National Infrastructure Pipeline. And for the last 3 years, ever since it was launched, we have seen both central and state governments take a primary role in financing that infrastructure. So if you look at the relative shares, around 45%, at least 45% comes from the government budgets across the central government and the state governments. Maybe another 20 to 25% typically comes from the banks and non-banking finance companies, many of which are sector specific, like Power Finance Corporation, for example. And if we look at the private sector, I think their share is typically around 20 to 25%. And that's the part which needs to be focused on if the capital expenditure has to be sustainable. So in terms of this year's budget, we definitely expect the government to maintain its own spending in capital expenditure, maybe increase it by around 10% or so. So that's one key expectation. In terms of focus areas of capital expenditure, infrastructure would pretty much continue to be the mainstay. And within infrastructure, I think, as has always been the trend in the past, railways and roads.
Key infrastructure ministries like railways, road transport and highways, and shipping are likely to see a sizable surge in budgetary allocations and gather a larger share of the centre's total capex. While the highway budget has been touted to be upwards of 2.1 trillion rupees, much of it is expected to fund the cost overruns in the 10 trillion rupee Bharatmala project, which is likely to be delayed by at least 5 years. The railways will likely see a 1.9 trillion rupee budget with substantial allocations towards 400 to 500 Vande Bharat trains and upgradation of rail infrastructure. Railways may also roll out a pipeline of projects worth 2.7 trillion rupees. India Inc. will also look forward to the extension of the PLI scheme to infrastructure sectors such as telecom and shipping. The centre is currently working on a PLI for container manufacturing, which it may announce in the budget.
A boost in capital expenditure in the budget seems imminent, but it remains to be seen how the centre takes on sectoral concerns and boosts private capex, as public infra spending may not be as fruitful beyond a point.
The big theme appears to be capital expenditure, as Dhruvaksh explains. He rightly points out that private investment has not picked up much even after the government's capex push. So the expectation is that the centre will remain bullish on capex spree. Capex also features prominently in our interview, which is coming up next. The interview is with someone who has been at the center of budget making exercise for many years.
We won't make you wait any longer. Meet Congress leader and former Finance Minister P Chidambaram, who is in conversation with Indevjal Dhasmana.
With us is veteran Congress leader P Chidambaram. As the finance minister, he had presented 9 budgets, the second highest ever after Mr. Morarji Desai. Nobody other than him could have been a better person to talk about budget priorities and expectations outside the government.
Well, I don't think India can be immune to what is happening around the world. But that's a pipe dream. If the world is slowing down, it will affect India. For example, the OECD latest estimate of world growth in 2023 was 2.2%. But yesterday, the United Nations estimated that the world growth in 2023 will be 1.9%. The world is going into a recession. At least most advanced economies will go into a recession. That will affect our exports. That will affect capital flows into India. That may even increase the prices of some commodities. So I think we will be affected. And to pretend that we will not be affected is, I'm afraid, naive.
In your recent article in Indian Express, you have written that first advance estimate showed that GDP growth is being led by consumption, and the consumption will be affected by high inflation as well as rising unemployment. So, what should budget do to make inflation less and increase employment?
See, I don't know what the revenues will be and what capital expenditure that the government is planning. It's all very, very unclear. I think India's economy, being a consumption-driven economy, and therefore the other 3 engines of growth must be stimulated. When I asked the finance minister in the last session, among the 4 engines of growth, which are the promising engines, she was cautious about private investment. We know private investment is sluggish. She expressed a hope about exports, but that's neither here nor there. Therefore, the real question is, if demand will be lower and consumption-driven growth will be affected, they must ensure that more money is in the hands of the people, especially the tax-paying class. What they will do, I can't say. But clearly, in my view, while capital expenditure is good and will perhaps continue to be brisk from what the finance minister has said, she should do something about boosting exports, and she should do something about leaving more money in the hands of consumers, that is the people of India.
So does that mean increasing threshold for personal income tax or tweaking the tax rates?
See, I am opposed to multiple systems of taxation. They've already messed up a very neat system of taxation, which was 10, 20, 30. 10 for the initial bracket, 30 for the top bracket, and all else between at 20%. They have mucked it up by introducing a no exemption tax regime. There are not many takers. I'm afraid they will be tempted to push their pet theory of no exemption tax system and give some concessions there. But I can't say. But I think she should do something about leaving more money in the hands of the people, which means she can incentivize savings. She can cut the surcharges without affecting the basic tax structure. I think there are 3 or 4 options available to the finance minister. I would like to see which option she picks. I think she could cut the surcharges. She could reduce the cesses and taxes on petrol and diesel. These are options available.
You talked about surcharges and cesses. In recent times, the government has resorted to, union government has resorted to increasing cesses and surcharges, which gives less transfer to the states. Do you think that now the government should, as you are saying, cut cesses and surcharges also to give states their dues?
That's completely wrong on the part of the government. You see, the Finance Commission recommended that devolution to the states must be 42%, and after Jammu and Kashmir was dismembered into union territories, it became 41%. But effectively, what is devolved to the states is only about 30%. So it's really the central government is profiting at the cost of the states. I think the devolution formula designed by the Finance Commission must be adhered to. That's an independent thought, an independent cardinal principle. As far as what the central government can do to the people, leaving more money in the hands of the people, I've already said the obvious thing to do is to cut the prices either through cutting taxes or cesses on petrol and diesel, and cut the surcharges on income tax.
You said that finance minister had agreed that private investment is muted. In this concern, should the budget continue its focus on capex?
It should, because they are pursuing a theory which says public expenditure, public investment will crowd in private investment. I mean, I have not heard of it before the BJP came to power. All right, they may be right, they may be wrong on economic theory. I'm not going to comment on that. But why is private investment sluggish? When I asked her in the last session, and I said, you even scolded FICCI and CII for not investing. She said, yes, it's my business to meet them and urge them to invest. But that's all right. But you must find out answers why they are not investing. They're all cash rich. They have huge treasury chest in each company. But why are they not investing? She should really look into her government's policies to find out why investment is not happening.
And now the rural areas are still in distress after COVID. Should the budget increase allocation to PM Kisan, maybe to rupees 8,000 per household?
See, PM Kisan is a controversial scheme. PM Kisan goes to the person in whose name the title to the land stands. That means it's not always goes to the tiller, the actual agriculturist. It goes to many absentee landlords. I have a friend in one of the cities who has not visited his village for 30 years. And one day he got a check for PM Kisan. He is virtually abandoned that land. He says there is some oral lease with some agriculturist. The money is coming to him. And we have seen reports of detecting huge frauds in the PM Kisan list. Now, I'm not objecting to 6,000 rupees or 8,000 rupees per year to the actual tiller. If there's an actual tiller, you certainly give it to him. But I think there must be a way in which money can be put in the hands of the people without too much government selection or government interference. And the way to do that is to cut GST, cut taxes on petrol and diesel, cut even prices of petrol and diesel. See, this is an automatic transfer of money to the consumer. There's no selection, there is no human intervention. It's an automatic transfer of money to the consumer, to the farmer, to the owner of a tractor or a diesel vehicle. It's an automatic transfer if you cut the taxes and GST and petrol and diesel.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Chidambaram, for talking to us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
The main point that former Finance Minister P Chidambaram is making is that there should be money in the hands of the people, especially the tax-paying class, so that consumption goes up, and that the budget must go in that direction, including cut in cess and tax on petrol and diesel, as well as reduction in income tax surcharge. Ruchika, which point did you like the most?
I would pick the point on India is not immune to what's happening around the world in terms of recession. And of course, the conversation around public and private capex is rather interesting.
Quite right. And now, the budget nugget. Ruchika will tell us about it.
Well, I will just give you the headline. It is on the economic survey that comes a day before the budget. Arup Roy Chaudhary and Swapnil Joglekar will decode it for our viewers.
At its most basic, the economic survey details the country's economic performance over the year gone by. So ahead of Union Budget 2023, Chief Economic Advisor V. Anantha Nageswaran will present the Economic Survey 2022-23. Besides providing information on economic performance over the previous year, the Economic Survey talks about the plans and schemes the government implemented. It helps assess their impact and prepares the ground for any major announcements in the budget. For example, the survey may discuss how stressed bank balance sheets are. A major recapitalization program for banks in the union budget may follow this. If the coming budget is farmer-oriented, the survey will talk at length about the state of the rural economy and so on. The survey also projects the real GDP growth of the economy for the next year and lays out the challenges it may face in the short to medium term from a global and domestic perspective. The coming survey is expected to discuss the imminent global recession and how it will impact India's economy. This will be Nageswaran's first economic survey, though he was appointed CA just days before the previous economic survey. In fact, at the post-survey press conference last year, Principal Economic Advisor Sanjeev Sanyal shared the dais with Nageswaran. It was Sanyal's show, but together they held up a copy of the economic survey before the media. The surveys by Nageswaran's predecessors like K.V. Subramanian and Arvind Subramanian have sparked many key debates in economic and public finance circles. For example, Arvind Subramanian's survey sparked discussion on the need for a bad bank, universal basic income, direct benefit transfers, inflation forecasting and other topics. K.V. Subramanian's last survey had a very interesting chapter on thalinomics, or how much Indians have to pay in different parts of the country to be able to afford a traditional thali, a proxy for purchasing power. The Chief Economic Advisor prepares the survey with his, and it has not been her so far, team of Indian Economic Service officers. And over the years, it has changed form many times. One of the first economic surveys carried little more than data and was part of the budget itself. It became a separate entity in 1964.
Whether it's for the assessment of various sectors or for the popular terms that it has coined, like Thalinomics and Jam Trinity, Economic Survey can be a
Yes.
compelling document any day.
Yes, one can keep going back to the survey again and again for all the analysis that it offers.
In fact, tomorrow is the Economic Survey, and
Yes.
Business Standard is getting ready for a special show to be aired tomorrow itself.
And on the budget day, we have yet another show that will analyze and simplify the budget for you like nobody else does. And you must tune in for that.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.